Have you ever met someone whose presence alone made you feel calm? Someone who didn't need to convince anyone, didn't need to speak much, yet simply being near them felt different. Now ask yourself another question. What if that peace wasn't a personality trait, but the result of a fully awakened state of consciousness? Most people think the crown chakra is simply the seventh chakra. But in reality, it is the doorway through which human consciousness begins remembering its connection with something infinitely greater than the individual mind. When this doorway is closed, life feels heavy. Everything seems random. Fear becomes normal. The search for happiness never ends because it is always directed outward. But when the crown chakra begins to awaken, your relationship with reality starts to change. You stop looking for meaning and slowly begin discovering that meaning has always been looking for you. The fascinating part is that this awakening happens in recognizable stages. No one jumps from complete unconsciousness to enlightenment overnight. Just as the sun rises gradually, so does consciousness. Today, we'll explore the 8 levels of crown chakra awakening. As we move through each one, don't ask yourself which level sounds the most spiritual. Ask yourself only one question. Which one honestly describes my life today? Because the first step toward awakening is radical honesty, and you may discover that you're much closer to the next level than you ever imagined. Chapter 1. Levels 1 and 2, the sleeping seal and the first cracks. The first level is called the sleeping seal. At this stage, the crown chakra is almost completely dormant. Life is experienced only through the physical senses. If something cannot be measured, it probably doesn't exist. The invisible feels imaginary. Meditation seems unnecessary. Silence feels uncomfortable. The mind becomes completely absorbed by survival, work, achievement, entertainment, consumption, and constant stimulation. Yet something interesting happens here. Almost everyone at this level carries a quiet emptiness they cannot explain. They often believe they need more money, more success, more recognition, another relationship, another goal. But every achievement provides only temporary satisfaction. Soon, the emptiness returns. Why? Because the soul isn't hungry for more experiences. It is hungry for remembrance. But remembrance cannot happen while the mind is constantly distracted. Eventually, life interrupts the distraction, sometimes through loss, sometimes through illness, sometimes through heartbreak, sometimes through complete exhaustion, or even through success itself. When someone achieves everything they wanted, only to realize they still don't feel whole. This is where level 2 begins, the first cracks. Nothing dramatic may happen on the outside, but everything changes inside. A conversation suddenly feels deeply meaningful. A spiritual book seems to describe your own life. A meditation brings unexpected tears. A strange coincidence feels too perfect to be accidental. You begin asking questions that never interested you before. Who am I? Why am I here? Is consciousness more than the brain? Is there something beyond what I can see? Notice something important. The answers don't come first. The questions do. Real awakening always begins with curiosity, never with certainty. The ego loves certainty. The soul loves discovery. And once these first cracks appear, they never completely disappear. You may ignore them for years. You may return to old habits. You may even convince yourself that nothing happened. But somewhere inside, your consciousness has already started remembering. And that remembrance quietly changes every decision you make from that moment forward. Activation. I want you to pause for a second. Think about the first moment your life began changing. Maybe it was a painful loss. Maybe it was an extraordinary dream. Maybe it was a coincidence that science couldn't explain. Or maybe it was simply a feeling that there had to be something more. If you know exactly what that moment was, write only one word in the comments: awakened. I'm genuinely curious to see how many people watching this video have already heard the first whisper of their soul. Because what comes next is where most spiritual seekers unknowingly become trapped. Chapter 2. Levels 3 and 4. The Seeker and the First Glimpses. Level 3 is one of the longest stages of the entire journey. It is called the Seeker. The crown chakra begins opening through the intellect. Suddenly, you become fascinated by spirituality. You read books, watch documentaries, study consciousness, learn about chakras, energy, ancient civilizations, near-death experiences, meditation, and mystical traditions from around the world. Your mind expands enormously. But there is also a hidden danger. Knowledge can create the illusion of transformation. Many people begin believing they are awakened, simply because they understand spiritual concepts. But knowing the map is not the same as walking the path. You can explain meditation beautifully without ever experiencing deep inner silence. You can describe enlightenment without living from peace. You can memorize hundreds of spiritual teachings while still being controlled by fear, anger, comparison, and insecurity. This realization eventually opens the door to level 4. The First Glimpses. For the first time, spirituality stops being information. It becomes experience. Maybe it happens during meditation, maybe during prayer, maybe while watching the sunrise, maybe while sitting completely alone. For a brief moment, the thinking mind disappears. Time seems to stop. Everything feels interconnected. The peace is unlike anything you've ever known. And for those few moments, you don't believe in consciousness. You become conscious. But then, the experience fades. Daily life returns. Stress returns. Fear returns. Old emotional reactions return. Many people think they have failed. They haven't. The mountain has simply revealed itself. Now begins the real climb. Every genuine awakening moves through this rhythm. Expansion, contraction, light, shadow, clarity, confusion, again and again, until peace slowly becomes more stable than fear. Activation. Now I'd like you to answer honestly. Not for me, for yourself. Are you mostly collecting spiritual knowledge, or are you actually living what you've learned? Comment only one number. 3, if you feel you're still in the stage of seeking and learning. Or 4, if you've already experienced moments that completely changed your understanding of reality. Don't explain. Just leave the number, then read the comments. You may discover that thousands of people around the world are walking beside you without ever knowing your name. Because consciousness has a remarkable way of bringing kindred souls together. Chapter 3. Levels 5 and 6, the flickering flame and the stable presence. If you've reached this point, something inside you has already changed. You no longer seek spiritual experiences out of curiosity. You seek them because you've tasted something real, and nothing else satisfies in quite the same way. This is level 5, the flickering flame. The crown chakra is opening more consistently. Meditation no longer feels like a technique. It feels like coming home. Your intuition becomes clearer. Synchronicities become more frequent. You begin sensing the energy of places, of people, and sometimes even your own thoughts before they become emotions. You notice something else. You still face challenges. You still become discouraged. You still experience fear. But you don't remain there as long as you once did. Something inside you always finds its way back to center. It's as though an invisible compass has awakened within your soul. Then, after years of practice, something extraordinary begins to happen. You enter level 6, the stable presence. This is one of the greatest turning points in spiritual evolution. Peace is no longer something you occasionally experience. It becomes the foundation from which you live. Life continues bringing uncertainty. People still disappoint you. Plans still change. Difficult days still arrive. But they no longer have the power to pull you away from yourself. You begin responding instead of reacting, listening instead of arguing, observing instead of judging. And without even trying, your presence starts affecting those around you. Some people feel calmer after speaking with you. Others feel inspired without understanding why. Not because you possess special powers, but because coherence is contagious. A peaceful consciousness silently invites other hearts to remember their own peace. This is why the most awakened people are often the quietest people in the room. They no longer feel the need to prove what they know, because their life already demonstrates it. Activation. Let me ask you something. When life becomes difficult, how long does it take before you find your inner balance again? Minutes? Hours? Days? Think about the answer carefully. Then write one sentence in the comments. I always return to peace. Not as a declaration of perfection, but as a commitment to the person you're becoming. Because every time you return to your center, your crown chakra opens a little more. Chapter 4. Levels 7 and 8. The Bridge of Light and the Embodied Star. Very few people reach these final stages, not because they are reserved for a chosen few, but because they require complete surrender. At level 7, something remarkable happens. Your consciousness begins extending beyond the crown chakra itself. Many traditions describe this as the opening of the soul star, the luminous bridge between your human awareness and your higher consciousness. Guidance becomes natural. Intuition becomes effortless. Synchronicities become part of daily life. Sometimes the answer arrives before the question. Sometimes you wake from a dream already knowing exactly what needs to be done. Life begins feeling less like a series of accidents and more like a conversation with the universe. Yet something unexpected also happens. The deeper your awakening, the less interested you become in impressing anyone with it. You stop chasing mystical experiences. You stop needing validation. You stop trying to convince people who are not ready, because real wisdom never demands attention. It quietly radiates. Then comes level 8, the embodied star, the rarest level of all. Here, the bridge is no longer something you cross. It becomes your permanent state. The light you once searched for above you now lives through you. You no longer seek enlightenment. You express it. There is no separation between meditation and daily life, between the sacred and the ordinary. Every conversation becomes sacred. Every act of kindness becomes a prayer. Every moment becomes an opportunity to bring more light into the world. History has known a few people like this, not because they performed miracles, but because their very presence awakened something inside everyone they met. They did not escape the earth. They transformed it simply by the way they lived. And perhaps that has always been the true purpose of awakening, not to leave this world behind, but to become a living source of light within it. Activation. Now that you've discovered all the 8 levels, I want you to answer with complete honesty. Which level describes your consciousness today? Don't choose the level you wish you were. Choose the one that genuinely reflects your daily life. Write only the number in the comments, then spend a few moments reading the answers from others. You may discover that countless souls around the world are walking beside you, each taking a different step along the very same path. Conclusion: wherever you find yourself today, remember this. There is no shame in being at level 1, and there is no pride in reaching level 8. Every stage has its own beauty. Every stage has its own lessons. The purpose of the crown chakra is not to make you feel superior. It is to help you remember who you have always been. So don't rush your awakening. Don't compare your journey with anyone else's. Simply continue choosing presence over distraction, peace over fear, awareness over unconsciousness.